Hi y'all, welcome to Chao Time. I'm really excited about this week's episode. It's about this Orient Triton. I'm excited because this was actually the first watch that was recommended to me to review when I first started making YouTube videos. And one of the first comments I got was a suggestion to review this watch. I told that person that I would do it, and here I am many months later, maybe even a year later, doing this review. So excited for that, and thank you for the suggestion. Like I said, this is the Triton. This is the one with the power reserve. This is the blue dial one, and yeah, let's get into it. But before we move on any further, I'd like to just remind you that in order for me to make these watch reviews, I have to buy watches, and I buy watches and I sell watches. So down below is a link to my Instagram. I usually have watches on there for sale. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes it's outdated. Such is life. If you don't see anything you like, that's okay. You can still give the channel a like or subscribe, and I would appreciate that. So this watch is a value diver watch, and so it's going to kind of fall into that sports tool watch category. The way I review watches is by objectively rating them against the rubric in a bunch of categories such as the case, the dial, the movement, and the history. I also do a completely subjective personal opinion at the end of the review that just talks about how I personally make my watch buying decisions, if that's useful to you at all. So let's get into it. We'll start with the function, feel, and visual appeal of the case and bracelet. This hefty stainless steel watch has a very classic mix of polished and brushed portions. The edge between brush and polish is well executed, but where brushed portions come together is a different story. The brushing overlaps, but is nearly impossible to see without a loupe. In terms of comfort though, all aspects of the watch that touch the skin on a regular basis are rounded and pleasant. The crown is located at 4 o'clock, further enhancing comfort. It has cutouts to improve usability, but is still smoother than I like. It has a rubber ring, which is too recessed to aid in grip, disappointing, and a very slightly embossed logo. The bracelet is fixed to the case with solid end links, and the clasp is stamped. There is a safety retainer and double push buttons. The clasp also has 4 micro adjust holes, which I appreciate. The one-piece solid links are held together with a pin and collar system. The bezel is a bit mushy with audible clicks, but not very tactile. The bezel is made of aluminum and has a lume pip embedded. The sapphire crystal within is completely flat, but does have anti-reflective coating, helping with visibility. There don't seem to be many quality control issues, which is always nice to see when researching a watch. 6 out of 10 for form, 7.5 out of 10 for function. Let's move on to the dial. The texture of the blue dial is very simple and basic matte. The indices are applied, but also of a basic shape and give minimal 3D effect. They are filled with lume, but it's not very long lasting or bright. The print on the dial is well executed though, so at least there's that. The hands are brushed and painted. Again, the lume is not especially bright, but the paint is well done and give the effect of floating hands. There is a slightly recessed power reserve and date window, each location forcing an hour marker to be cut out for space. The dial approaches being busy, but is still very legible. Overall, nothing special, but also nothing glaringly wrong with it outside of the disappointing lume quality. 6 out of 10 for function, 9 out of 10 for form. Let's move on to the movement inside. It's the Orient caliber 40N5A. It has 3 complications, beats at 21,600 beats per hour, and has a 40-hour power reserve. It is said to have a rating of plus 25 to minus 15 seconds per day. and my particular watch fluctuates around the lower end of that scale, losing about 45 seconds in the last 4 days. There's honestly not a lot to say about this movement. It seems reliable enough, as there are a few complaints about it on the forums, but that could be due to a number of reasons. 4 points for form, 4.5 points out of 10 for function. That brings us to a total so far of 37.5 out of 60, and also brings us to the most subjective category, the brand's heritage and prestige. Orient started producing watches in 1950, and surprisingly has achieved little of note or historical importance. However, they managed to stay in business long enough to be purchased by Epson, which also owns Seiko. As such, the connection to Seiko makes it seem like a smaller sibling trying to make its own mark. In some corners of the watch enthusiast's world, Orient is in fact the spiritual successor to the role of Seiko, an affordable and well-built watch with no frills, but adequate features. For that small, quiet, but hardcore fan base, Orient earns a 4 out of 10 for brand heritage and prestige, bringing the total score to 41.5 out of 70. The Orient Triton is marketed as the Neptune by Orient, but was already nicknamed the Triton by owners. There are a variety of colorways and even a version with a different movement that doesn't have the power reserve. They can be found from $300 to $500. I'll use $350 to calculate the value multiplier, because you can find good examples at that price pretty easily if you're willing to be patient. This means that the value multiplier is 1.718 and the value score is 71.297. That places the watch in 20th place in total score and a much more impressive 5th place in value. So that brings me to my personal opinion on this watch, and it is kind of a strange one for me. I do love value divers that bring a lot to the table, and I do feel like this does. It has the sapphire, it has a nice crown and case and bezel, it's legible, it has the power reserve complication, which for whatever reason I just love. I know that when I'm wearing it, it's pretty much always at full, but when I'm winding it, after it's been sitting in the box and watching it come up, it's just fun. I don't know why. Other than that, there's, I guess, just not a lot pulling at me for this watch. It's a tad bit too large. Sometimes I feel like it's fine. Sometimes I feel like it's a little bit too big. And the bracelet is quite hefty. It's not exactly comfortable. I guess I'm a little bit spoiled for touch points at this point in my watch collection journey. The bezel is not super fun to play with, if that makes sense. It's satisfying in some ways, but like I kind of wish it was a little bit more tactile. The crown, it's really nice and big, but it's just not very easy to operate still. If you could fix those two things, make it just a tad smaller, and also make the bracelet taper down a little bit more, I think this would be a really, really great watch for me. I personally don't like watches that make themselves known throughout the day. For whatever reason, it could be that it's starting to get uncomfortable, or perhaps the bracelet is just starting to dig into me a little bit. This has a variety of issues like that, where when I'm wearing it, I often like, adjusting it or trying to do this or that, because it's just, I can feel it there. I like for watches to kind of disappear a little bit more. So, do you disagree with the scoring? Is there anything that you'd like to change about the rubric? Is there any watch that you'd like to see me review? Let me know in the comments below, and thanks for making it to the end. Bye.